Stan Jabalisco here, proprietor and operator of amateur radio station W1GV, Whiskey 1 Good Vibrations. Last night I was just daydreaming during the night, awake dreaming, about the various keying devices for generating CW that I have owned during my nearly 52 years as an amateur radio operator. The very first key I had was a straight key for a code practice oscillator made by a company called Ameco, A-M-E-C-O, and I still have that key today, stored away in a little box. It's missing its spring, so that I'd need to replace the spring that holds the key open and allows you to press it down. But I still have that old thing. Since that time, I've owned a wide variety of keying devices, starting with the ICO keyer, E-I-C-O. A keyer that would generate DAs or dashes when you press the paddle to the left, and dits or dots automatically when you pressed it to the right. But it did not have what they called back then dot memory, so that if you wanted to send, for example, the letter N or G, N as in, I forget the phonetic now, November, G is in golf, or if you want to send the numeral 9, for example, if you shifted the key or paddle over to the right too fast, you'd miss that, you'd drop that last dit, and that used to be a real problem for me, a great source of frustration. I also owned a Hallicrafter's keyer called the T-O keyer, Tango Ocean, T-O keyer. It too lacked dot memory, which was a source of frustration for me. Eventually I got a keyer that had dot memory and also had the ability that if you closed both the dash and the dot contacts simultaneously, you'd get an alternating string of da 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 da, like that, and they called that a squeeze keyer. If you squeezed a two-lever paddle, you had to have a two-lever paddle to make that work. So I got one of those. They called it a squeeze keyer or an iambic keyer, I guess, as in the poetry, iambic pentameter. Da-da, 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 and all of that sort of thing. For the longest time I had iambic paddles, some mostly mechanical, but a few of them were of the sort that were designed so that all you had to do was touch the face of either the da or the dit paddle and keyer portion, and it would work. I found that to be very difficult to use because it was simply too sensitive. Something about it, a non-mechanical key paddle. So I preferred the mechanical key paddle, preferably the either the two-lever or the one-lever type. But my favorite of all has always been the Vibroplex. They called it a vibro keyer. It's not the semi-automatic key, the Vibroplex. I've never had one of those where you press the lever to the left and you get a steady carrier like a straight key. You press it to the right and you get a mechanically generated set of dits, which depends on the adjustment of a complex set of weights and springs. Quite an elaborate device. A semi-automatic key, they sometimes call that. Never did that one. Never got into that. But to this day, my favorite paddle, my favorite keyer of of the great keyer paddle concubine harem that I've owned in my lifetime has been that Vibroplex single lever paddle. I've also owned some keyboards. Of course, you can get a computer now to generate Morse code with a keyboard. I had one that didn't have any letter memory at all, so that if you hit, say you wanted to send golf, GOLF, and you hit the O too soon after the G, you'd miss the O. You had to be very careful about the rhythm that you hit those keys. After a while, I got another keyboard. Both of these were made by a company called HAL Communications. HAL is in the HAL in the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. In Urbana, Illinois, as a matter of fact, just like in the movie, but they called it HAL Devices back then, at that time. The second keyboard I owned was called the DKB 2010, Delta Kilo Bravo 2010, and it had a 3-character memory in its keying scheme so that you could get a little bit ahead. You could type a little bit too soon, but you didn't want to type too far ahead or you'd start dropping characters. But that was a lot more user-friendly, sort of the keyboard analog of dot memory. I always thought using a keyboard was sort of somehow cheating in sending CW. There's no particular reason that it is. You can send it faster that way. I've known a couple of hams who could send CW in excess of 80 words a minute using those kinds of keyboards. And one in particular, I believe his call was W2KFA, Kilo Foxtrot. And what is a alpha? W2KFA, I believe, was his call, and his name was Gene, Gene, like genie without the I. He was able to send and receive in his head, read in his head, at speeds in excess of 100 words a minute. And I found that to be just superhuman. I could read in my head pretty reliably up to about 60 or 65 words a minute at one time, and with a keyboard I could send at approximately the same speed. But after a period of time in college, I got over that little quirk in my character, and those concubines disappeared from my harem. And now I do have one iambic paddle, but I use it as if it were a single lever paddle. I just behave that way with it. I never use the squeeze or iambic function. And my favorite paddle remains to this day the Vibroplex Vibrokeyer, they called it. It's still sold today. It has the same look. There was a period of time, in fact, when my right arm was paralyzed by an injury, and I had to send CW left-handed, and I reversed the dit and the da contacts so that you press the thing to the left and you get a string of dits. You press it to the right and you get a string of das. And for a little over a year, I was able to send 20 or 25 words a minute, left-handed, even though I'm right-handed. It was either that or not send at all, and that was unthinkable. So many keyers I have owned, different circuits, different boxes, different devices. Now, of course, most transceivers have, and transmitters even, have the keyer built in, so you don't need an external keyer. And they are always of the iambic variety. But now I use the ICOM IC746 Pro and the It's one of the Yaesu radios. I forget which one. For mobile, I use the Yaesu. For fixed station operation, the ICOM. They both have built-in keyers, and I use the Vibroplex paddle with the IC746 Pro and a bencher iambic paddle with the Yaesu radio. Many, many keyers, many, many paddles, a great harem full of Morse code or CW generating devices and gimmicks. All have been mine, all mine. But my favorite again remains the Vibroplex, and probably shall remain so till the day I die. Stan Gibilisco, W1GV, signing off, saying 73 and so long, which, whatever key or circuit, whatever paddle or keyboard that I may use, shall always translate to di-di-di-da-di-da.